Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast, another mini episode that I put out on a Sunday. As you know, you probably listened to before. And today I am going to be talking about something that comes up a lot in my work with men. I know this often, but it's one of the common reasons when men come to me and they're struggling in relationships or their dating lives, particularly this one, is they find that they get scared and they lean out of a relationship just as it starts to get serious, or just as the woman they're with starts to get attracted. And it's a massive problem because it becomes really a vicious cycle of it continually happen time and time again. And often we try and come to reasons of why it's happening. And my experience is that we usually say the woman was wrong, the way she wanted the relationship was wrong, there was something wrong with the relationship, the timing was bad. And we look at all the reasons, and the reasons we don't look at, and we don't really want to admit is us, is that we are the creating this dynamic. And it's something I see, again, we don't want to acknowledge it. And if it's not us creating a dynamic 100%, then there is always a responsibility in this dynamic that we're creating it. And if you don't face that part, you will continue to create that dynamic at different levels of relationship. It might be the first date. It could be the second date. It could be after 5 dates. It could be after 1 year. It could be after 4 years. And I say this as someone that's done all of those things. I've done all of those things, right? And I sit here now as someone who, I just had a baby with my partner, Orsa. If you're a regular listener, you know. And I'm really analysing like what I've been through and what got me here. And then what I see in my clients. So I'm going to talk about this now. So the first thing is, the first thing that always comes up when I talk to men about this, is they don't necessarily say this directly, is there's a fear of vulnerability, a fear of opening up themselves or opening up their lives to somebody else. And the fear of how they may reject them, or they will lead to emotional pain, breakup, heartbreak, hurt, arguments, whatever it is. Fear of vulnerability kind of covers all those, because all those put us into vulnerable positions, right? And what it causes, this one here, is it causes us to withdraw, because it's like there's moments, a relationship or a budding relationship or dating thrives on vulnerability. When we open ourselves up, open up our thoughts, our ideas, our feelings, our experiences to someone else, that is the water that makes a relationship grow into something, right? Especially vulnerability without demand or expectation from the other person to be vulnerable or to open up or to even, not say acknowledge us, but like where there's no expectation. We want them to, but if they don't, it's okay. And we're in open space. Like, I'm vulnerable about my life and the things I've been up to, and I'm an invitation to her vulnerability, but I'm not a demand for it, or I'm not angry if she doesn't reciprocate in the way, or she doesn't respond in the way that I think she should. It's a really important part that around vulnerability. So you withdraw, right? And you can tell what this shows up as just like struggles with expressing your feelings and emotions, avoiding meaningful conversations, especially conversations about, say, commitment or where this is going, or even avoiding talking about past relationships, family histories, sexual histories, all these sorts of things, right? That's one of the key reasons why this happens to you. Another reason why is past experiences. Past failed relationships, past traumas, past wounding that's occurred. And this can be anything from like you've had a string of failed relationships, so now you're really afraid of being vulnerable, or you've had it that other partners in the past have cheated on you, right? Have cheated on you or left you for someone else. That's something that's commonly come up with the men that I work with. Or there's experience of familial family traumas of neglect, of not being there for someone, right? And these can impact how we show up in dating and relationships. And if we don't resolve these things in our minds, our hearts, in our bodies, and our beings, they continue to cycle into our relationships. Signs: if you're overly cautious, right, or you're very skeptical about relationships, or you find yourself your assumption is of mistrust of people. Like your assumption, one of your first thoughts, the first thoughts that come to your head when someone does something, is you're assuming they're in some way going to hurt you, or not maybe even intentionally, but they may hurt you, or they may have bad intentions. The chances are that the past experiences are really affecting the future. Or even if you are pulling from like online people telling you like, oh yeah, dating's dangerous because women want to take your money, or you can't have sex with anyone anymore because trying it on with a woman is going to lead to sexual assault allegations, stuff like that. This is part of the wounding, part of the trauma, right? Another key part that creates this kind of leaning out in relationships or in the start of relationships is this fear of losing independence. This was a really big one for me, which was like, I didn't want anyone to get too close because they would then impact upon my space. And when I say space, I mean space and time, like my space and time, right? What I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it and how I wanted to be in my space and time and how I wanted to be alone. You know, it's a very masculine thing to be very concerned about space and time and our independence and our alone time and all those sorts of things, right? It really can play on our minds if we think like, oh, we're going to be overwhelmed, you know, someone's going to want all our time. And we often, in this kind of fear, what happens is, you know, we start spending time with someone and we start having these stories in our head of like having no time alone, or we can't ask for space, or we can't say, I don't want to meet up tonight. We have all these kind of stories that we can't do these things, even though the person hasn't said that, right? And we're going to talk about boundaries because it's an important part to solve this later on. And again, it shows up as overly cautious about making plans, about making future things as well. Future plans are a big one. A resistance to like sharing, or my big thing was, this was funny for me, if I started to see somebody, if she left stuff at my house, like without asking me, right? So, you know, someone leaves your place, you've been seeing each other for a little while, and you find that they've left their toothbrush, or you find they've left some clothes, or even they ask me, can I leave some stuff? It would just create this panic of like, oh my God, this is already leading to this relationship stage. And you know, it'd create all this stuff for me. So those are the kind of key ones, as well as I think the last one here really, I don't know, actually when I think about it, the main one I'm going to finish up with is really a fear of emotional kind of intimacy. It's just a closeness. It goes hand in hand with the fear of vulnerability, but it's like not wanting to, a fear of enmeshment, a fear of loss of being, but enmeshment emotionally. Like my emotions can be tied to your emotions and how you're feeling, and I can't risk that because that's too risky, because, you know, I can't control your emotions. It's a very standard thing, right? There's something I used to say a lot. It's like, you know, I can't be with my partner's emotions, or I don't want how I feel to impact you, you know, because I can't control your reactions, and then I have to deal with your reactions. It used to be too much for me. So it's just standard things like hesitance in engaging in deep conversation, hesitance of talking about like anything, plans as well for me, you know, because it's like, oh, the more we plan, the more we're emotionally tied together. If you're lucky there, you might hear a little Bjorn in the back having a little cry. But yeah, and it really impacts the depth and experience of love and connection and partnership, right? It really just like pours, I don't know, man, acid on it, not watering it like a garden, right? So it's a really big one. And the last two ones that I think come up in minor levels or very unconsciously is kind of a need for control, right? This need to control everything, to be in control. And when we're in control, we feel safe. And obviously relationships and emotions are things we can't always control. So like you feeling uncomfortable with any surprises or unpredictability, you know, or like even decision making can be one as well. And the last piece, and again, this is a very unconscious one, often for men, is low self-esteem. This low self-esteem that actually kind of bubbles under the surface that men aren't always aware of, right, is that they don't actually feel good enough for the love they desire, right? And that low self-esteem creates self-sabotage. It's like, I've met this great woman, she's really leaning in, and it's almost like an unconscious thought that happens of like, I like her, but if she knows who I really am and how I really feel about myself, she won't want me, right? And sometimes they're so unconscious they don't know it's happening, and men lean out at that point because they're uncomfortable of feeling like they're lesser than the woman they're with, right? And as you might have noticed, a lot of these fears and issues and concerns that create this kind of dynamic of leaning out, they're very standard things for avoidant men, avoidantly attached men. If you want some more details on that, I've got a number of podcasts I've recorded in the last couple of months about this, some solo ones. You can just scroll back a few. There's a number of them in there about being an avoidant man and what you can do about that. And I've actually got a workshop that I'll talk about at the end that's free on the 13th of August at 7 p.m. Just the details in the show notes, but I'm going to continue. Why is it important to heal this? The first thing I'm going to say is this, is I used to believe, and I see this with a lot of guys, They would believe if I just find the right woman, this will stop happening. And it won't. Trust me. I've seen it in myself. I've seen it in other men's lives. You have to tackle the different pieces, the emotional pieces, the fears, the worries and concerns. If you do not, it will just keep happening. Right? You might get into a relationship and it'll happen to a lesser degree, but it will still cause disconnection and harm to your relationship. I've met with men who've been married for 5-10 years and they haven't dealt with the emotional impact, and their relationships really suffer because of it. And they create lasting damage that takes many years to repair. And if they'd done it early on, they'd be in a much happier marriage, much happier relationships, right? This can lead these fears. If you continually follow the road of these fears around trust and emotional intimacy and vulnerability and so forth, it actually leads to this deep loneliness. You might find relationships to be very superficial, right? Because you'll feel safe and in control, but it'll be very superficial. And you'll have this sense of feeling that something is missing. That feeling you have where something is missing is often that what's missing is depth and being seen and allowing yourself to be seen, right? So you'll continue to create relationships like that. And probably the most harmful, right, piece around if you leave this alone, you don't do anything about it, you become more and more entrenched in your beliefs and in your fears, and that they are the truth and the only truth. You get more entrenched in the belief that you can never find a relationship, or you will never find someone who is a match for you, or you will always keep doing this in relationships. The more it happens, the more you succumb to the fears, the more you succumb to the anxieties, the more you become entrenched in the belief that it is the truth and it's how reality is and that you can't change. It's really important because I see this again and again, men who come to talk to me for coaching, and it comes to the point they don't believe they can change, right? And they can, then they go on that journey with me in my programs and so forth, and they see some change. And once they start seeing the change, it's beautiful. But it can be very a lonely, sad place when we feel that we can't change and we can't do anything about these beliefs, and these beliefs feel like they are the truth. We have to remember, fears are just what's in our mind. They're not out in reality happening to us at the intensity that the fear occurs to us in the moment. So what can you do? I think one of the things you got to do is you got to really be mindful of the content that you consume around dating and love and relationships. It's very easy to get very entrenched in this red pill, black pill, and men going their own way, this sort of content that makes you more and more believe that women are dangerous, relationships are dangerous, men, it's not good for men and so forth. And that's not the truth of it. I can look at my friends, and I've got 10, 15 friends who are at various levels of commitment in relationships and incredibly happy, whether that's children, no children, and so forth, but they're committed and they're really actually happy. And the men I often know who are not in relationships, right, and stuck in these beliefs are bitter and sad, especially when you get the older you get, right? Another piece is emotional work, right? It's practicing this emotional kind of intimacy with people in your life, right? And building more and more comfort with sharing who you are with people. And it can be small steps, like when I do in my programs with the men, I take them through practice and so forth to do with each other and with other people in their lives, to practice in ways that feel really comfortable and even slightly uncomfortable as well, being more emotionally intimate with people, being more open with who they are and their thoughts and their ideas, and train your capacity for this kind of emotional expression, emotional intimacy and vulnerability. So really, really vital piece, because if you do not tackle this to a good level, right, then you're a non-starter, because your relationships will be superficial, right? Trust, building trust in people, in humans. This can be harder because you have to create good, not milestones, that's not the word I want. You want to create good points, data points in your life about having experience. And why this is difficult to do sometimes alone is that what we do is we are still looking at what occurs in our life, like relationships or dating, with our negative beliefs. So we might meet someone and we might go on a date and we'll go, oh, I was vulnerable in this moment and she rejected me. I shouldn't be vulnerable. Now I sit down with clients all the time and they say this to me, and then I go, okay, talk me through the date. Talk me through some of the conversations. And then I say things like, where did you hold back? Where did you withhold? Or where did you not ask questions that would have taken the conversation deeper? Like, where were you avoiding talking about yourself or the things you love or the things you want, or oh, when did you shut down because she mentioned something about a relationship or something like that? And then we actually uncovered that there's a little bit of vulnerability, but there's still a lot of holding back, right? And then we praise the vulnerability because that's good. They're leaning in, they're doing better. And you see, they take that and they see where they can learn and be better, and they take the positives instead of just seeing it as proof that their negative beliefs are the truth and the only truth. So that's the sort of work you got to do. There's emotional resilience work that has to be done as well around being okay with the fact that sometimes you'll be vulnerable and it won't be shown back to you, or sometimes people won't take your vulnerability in the way that you would desire. This is a standard part of life, right? Building resilience, right? That things won't go the way you want, and being able to like stay on the razor's edge, as one of my old coaches would say, William Whitecloud. Like, when you have this psychological tension, when you have this fear and these worries and anxieties, like staying in the game. You know, I've been watching a lot of football and Olympics in particular. You know, you see these guys in there, like I watched men's gymnastics just before I came in, and these guys are about to run up on a horse and jump on a horse, not an actual horse, but the vault. And they're under immense pressure, but they're so focused on what they want. They're so focused on how they want it to be. And that's what they put their energy in. And even when it doesn't go well, they let it go and they come back again. And that's the sort of level of resilience and intensity and showing up you need to start to cultivate, right? And it takes some time and it takes some support as well. You need to face the fears around, you know, not vulnerabilities. You do that with emotional work, but the fears that you hold around past experiences and past traumas, you really have to kind of face those in a way that's meaningful. Like, you know, journaling can be great, therapy can be really good, coaching can be really good, but you have to start to unpack them with somebody, right? And start to see them differently, because often we've seen them from a very particular angle of not necessarily what's true and what actually happened. And the truth is very subjective in these things, but we need to start having a different angle on it, because often we're putting ourselves at blame, especially if it's things that happen when you're young kids. We create shame, like we're something bad and wrong, right? Apologies if you can hear these screaming kids outside. So yeah, it's this really important thing to face that, right? Because a lot of us don't. We just tuck it under the rug and say it doesn't matter, and it does matter. It really does, right? Practice leaning into relationships, all of your relationships, even your friendships. Practice leaning in emotionally, like leaning in and like expressing more of who you are, asking more questions, trying to make plans with people. You know, making plans can be a very vulnerable thing to do. Like sharing where you're struggling, sharing where you could do with support. These things make a huge difference in your life, and you bring those same thing into relationships as well. I think the thing I finish up with is, or two things I finish up. One is to say that you got to cultivate this balance between independence and connection. That's a really important thing in relationship, right? Balancing independence and connection. And this requires us to be clear with communication and boundaries. You can create a relationship like I have that has a massive amount of independence, right? When you communicate clearly, when you're willing to say, hey, actually tonight, can we not go out tonight? I'd really love to just chill at home. Or actually next weekend, I don't want to see each other. It's not there's anything wrong. It's just that I really could do with some alone time, instead of not saying anything, spending the time together, but then being distant during the time. Really important, because then you can cultivate the independence, but with the communication, you building the connection, right? And the last thing I'll say is that I've got a workshop I'm running, Overcoming Avoidance, 4 Proven Strategies, right? This is me going a bit deeper into some of these things and some other bits and pieces around how we can overcome a lot of the fears I've talked about today, including defensiveness that comes up, better communication and so forth. That is happening on the 13th of August, which isn't far away now. And it is free. And the link's going to be in the show notes. So I'd love to see you there. If you can't make it live, it's also going to be recorded. So if you buy a ticket, you get a free ticket. You also get the recording that will be sent out afterwards. So come join me. You get some more details on this stuff. I'm going to probably do a bit of Q&A as well during it as well. So be able to ask me some questions. Because that, you know, just listening to podcasts isn't enough. You need to act on what you listen to. Need to really act. And also, you know, I think accountability is something that's been vital for me for my change and transformation, whether that's accountability with really trusted men who I look up to, or coaches and therapists and men's groups. And that's actually something I'm thinking about doing. I'm thinking about creating and I'm just kind of saying this off the fly, creating a community for men who are operating at a high level, who want to really have beautiful relationships, but show up in the world in a way that is like deeply healthy, mature, masculine, and to a community of men, a small community of men who support each other and hold each other accountable and actually call each other forward to being better, where we can give each other advice and so forth. And I'm just percolating the idea, right? And I want it to be like high level men. So it's men who are like, you're really committed, whether that's in the very areas of your life, and you can hold that commitment for yourself and other men so we can rise together. So I'm going to start putting something together about that. Probably a very small number of people, probably 5 to 7. So if that's something you're interested in, just drop me an email. The email's down here as well. But surely come along to the workshop, because that'd be really good as well. I got to run. But hope you've taken a lot from this episode. Share it with somebody. If there's someone in your life you know who this pattern's happening to, because you probably do, share it with them. Send it over to them. Yeah? Help them. Share the love. Support them and help them be better. Don't fear that they're going to get angry with you for sending it. Think more about the fact that they're going to really, really appreciate you thinking of them and wanting them to have a happy life and happy relationships. Peace and love. Ciao, ciao.